Yes. You don't think somebody will? Okay, well, that's a separate conversation. Another of the themes that strikes me here: war changes things. I'm quoting you again, the end of everything. Once Alexander grasped the full extent of Theban hatred, he concluded that only destroying the city rather than merely capturing it would end Greek opposition to Macedonia. Cortes decided there was no way to root out the imperial system without knocking the Aztecs' infrastructure down upon them. Such revised decisions are common throughout military history. Near the end of World War II, U.S. Army Air Corps General Curtis LeMay decided the only way to destroy Japan's dispersed manufacturing, which was deeply embedded within the neighborhoods of Tokyo, was to ignite the city. And we get the firebombing of Tokyo. Again, war changes things. So we are supplying the Ukrainians with weapons and materiel. We have 2 carrier groups in the Eastern Mediterranean to support the Israelis. And we have our forces disposed, our naval forces disposed in the Pacific. We don't know where our attack submarines are because there's no reporting on that, and there shouldn't be. But we're concerned about Taiwan. We're very concerned about Taiwan. What are the lessons of the end of everything for Americans as we face trouble, military challenges on 3 fronts?
If we would look at ourselves dispassionately and not say we're Americans, we're always number 10, we would say the following. We've never had, in terms of the percentage of GDP debt or in actual numbers, except for a brief period in World War II, $35 trillion we owe, and we are borrowing $1 trillion every 100 days. It's completely unsustainable. We've never had the military admit to us that it is short 40,000 troops and they don't know where to get them at a time when the American population has never been larger.
The Army missed its recruiting goals last year by 10%.
Yes.
And that was not the first year.
And we've had a porous border. We have never had no border at all. It ceased to exist. We've had 10 million people walk across without audit. We've never seen anything like it. We have the largest number of foreign-born residents, both in numbers, 50 million, and in percentages of the resident population, 13, we've ever had, at a time when we have lost confidence in the melting pot. Okay. We've had high crime areas before, high crime periods. We've never had a period in American history where our elites say that crime is not crime. It's a social construct, and you have to let somebody, a violent criminal, out the same day that he's arrested. That's a new theory, critical legal theory. Okay, we're a multiracial society, and we're the only successful multiracial democracy. We know that it depends on relegating your tribal affiliations to the general idea of being American. We are regressing into tribalism. So when you look at all of these challenges, and you look at the symptoms, we have never done anything like Afghanistan, just completely flee and leave $50 billion in weaponry to a terrorist organization that's selling all over the globe. Never had that before. We have never had, since World War II, a Verdun. We have passed the numbers of dead and wounded in Verdun. We're above 700,000 wounded, missing, or killed Russians and Ukrainians. And we're headed to Somme territory. And nobody has any idea how to stop this. Russia is not going to be able to take all of Ukraine, and we are not going to be able to get back the Donbass and Crimea. So it's going to continue. Nobody has an answer. Nobody takes serious that the Chinese would be crazy enough to go across the Taiwanese Strait and try to take that city. They say they can do it. So my point is, never have we been faced with such existential challenges in the post-war period, at a period when we are so weak, or at least we're not naturally weak. Our constitution is there, our natural resources, we lead the world. But when you look at crime, when you look at debt, when you look at the border, when you look at our universities, which were the envy of the world, they were the engine that drove American culture and power and technology, and they're in crisis. Science is in crisis.
So we're like the Thebans. We're not the same people.
We're not the same people. We're not the same people that maybe we have it in us. We're not the same people who stormed Omaha Beach when the first 2,000 people were mowed down. They
Victor,
just kept coming.
I want to play a brief video excerpt. You both work here. You're among the intellectuals you're off stage. The members of Congress are on stage, but they're always turning around saying, Blumenthal, did I get that right? Bridge, what about this? Is this sound serious? Do you feel a sense of seriousness descending that is adequate to the moment?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely. We're in a world of warfare, and we're not on a war footing.
Victor? Washington there's no sense of seriousness in Washington.
No, we think that the most important thing is canceling student debt or inaugurating new woke programs, but it's going to take us 7 years to replace the Javelin anti-tank weapons. We're short 155 millimeters. That was our signature. We were the biggest producer of shells in the world.
Victor, can I ask one? The book is called The End of Everything, and you describe 4 episodes, all of which take place, the most recent of which takes place about 4 centuries before the invention of nukes.
Yeah.
So let me quote, if I may. Here's a quotation from Clausewitz, who saw the Napoleonic Wars as a young Prussian officer and meditated on military theory and the rest of his life. Here's Clausewitz. This has always bothered me. If one side uses force without compunction, that side will force the other to follow suit. Even the most civilized of peoples can be fired with passionate hatred of each other. The thesis must be repeated. War is an act of force, and there is no logical limit to the application of that force. Thebes, wiped out. Carthage, leveled. Constantinople, civilization, blotted out. Aztecs, gone. And now we have nuclear weapons.
Among other things, we have AI, we have bioweapons apparently, that an accidental release from the Wuhan lab.
So should we? What I'm desperate to do here is to end on an upbeat, if I can find one anywhere. Should we take encouragement from the long period of the Cold War, when we had nuclear weapons, but managed to defeat Soviet communism without any use, without warfare, without a major war, without a major confrontation? Should we be cheered by that?
We should learn.
Or are we doomed?
No, we're not doomed.
All
we
right.
need to learn from wise men like Franklin Roosevelt, Harry Truman, Dwight Eisenhower, John Kennedy, even to an extent Lyndon Johnson, Richard Nixon, and the rest of them. They all had one
You're
thing.
not going to mention Ronald Reagan?
I'm getting to him.
Oh, all right.
And in a period of doubt where people had questioned their so-called Neanderthal approach to human nature, that they believed that deterrence and not dialogue or the UN kept the peace, along came Ronald Reagan. And he said, he basically said the degree which we are safe is the degree to which we help our friends and tell our enemies to be careful, because we will defend us and we're going to have the capability to do it. Deterrence, 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 which is just a Latin word to scare somebody off from doing something stupid. And if you don't believe in deterrence, then as Vegetus said, if you want peace, prepare for war. If you want war, prepare for peace.
Victor, will you close our conversation by reading a passage from Victor Davis Hanson, the author of The End of Everything, reading a passage from The End of Everything?
Well, thank you, to the degree that I can read well. The fate of the Thebans, Carthaginians, Byzantines, and Aztecs remind us that what cannot possibly happen can indeed on occasion occur when war unleashes timeless human passions and escalation rather than reduction and violence becomes a role of conflict. In this regard, we should remind ourselves that we really do not know the boundaries of what may follow from the dispute in the Ukraine, or a standoff over Taiwan, or strikes on nuclear facilities in Iran. Like their predecessors, modern attackers will on occasions insist on impossible terms. They will sometimes become further enraged by prolonged and toxic resistance. The targeted will believe that doomed resistance may not be so impossible, that their defenses are underestimated while their enemies' powers are exaggerated, and that reason rules war. And so they will hope that even their own defeat cannot possibly entail the end of everything.
Victor, on the Spaniards wipe out the Aztecs. To what extent? I'm just trying to think. To what extent is that an annihilation of the kind that takes place in the other examples? We have, I have a Mexican friend who said, "Well, just look around Mexico City. You see very few people of Spanish descent, and millions of people of Indian or Aztec descent. They didn't destroy them."
Aztec is a key word.
Oh, is that so? And the other thing is, I checked on this. I went online. There is still a Duque de Montezuma in Spain today. They took the grandchildren of the last emperor of the Aztecs back to Spain.
They did.
And honored them by ennobling them. Okay, so what gets destroyed? What is ended?
Nahuatl, the language that exists in Mexico today. I have been in my hometown where people who have come from Mexico and Spanish speakers cannot understand them. So, but Aztecs as a city, as a unique culture among indigenous people is destroyed. So when you talk to somebody and you say, well, if somebody says to you, the San Diego Aztecs, they never say the San Diego, that sports team, college team, they never say the San Diego Tlaxcalans or Toltecs. Because why do they not do that?
Couldn't spell it apart from anything
Because
else.
first of all, we have a chronicle of this majestic civilization and how advanced they were. As I said, in architecture, town planning, sanitation, very sophisticated. But they don't want to talk about the downside of cannibalism, human sacrifice. But the point is, if we were transported to 1521, Cortez would have never been able to defeat them without the help of the Tlaxcalans. He had, and their allies, he must have had he drew on an army over that 2.5 year period of over 200,000. And they probably lost.
Because the surrounding tribes were tired of being raided for captives who would be sacrificed.
As soon as the word got out that Cortez was back again, that he was not annihilated, he came back. And this time he had brigantines or boats, and he would navigate in a combined amphibious and land attack on the causeways and by land. And he figured out how to beat them. And he gave them an ultimatum that I want to save your city and make it the capital of New Spain. But if you don't, I'm going to destroy it. That word went out, and all of a sudden these fickle allies that sometimes had helped it, they massed. Said, my God, you're going to destroy.
We have a moment here.
And I can pay them back for all the things they did, and they ran wild. In fact, he says in his letters, and so does contemporary sources, that he regretted that once he unleashed these people, they butchered and butchered and butchered, and they destroyed Aztec central civilization. So yes, there are people who survived the Holocaust, and that's what it was, but centrally planned civilization with a priestly class, an urban center, it's now Spain, and the Spanish build on top of it, right on top of Tenochtitlan. They use the very foundations of they destroy it down to the foundations. It's gone. And there is no formal Aztec culture. There are indigenous people, of course, because they form about 1% of the population in what is Mexico.
And you can go to the Zócalo in Mexico City today, and on the very site of the Templo Mayor, the great Aztec pyramid, is a gigantic Spanish cathedral, which says, among other things, what it says is, we won, you lost.
Yes, and they were actually given there were concessions given from the Spanish to the Tlaxcalans, and they honored them. In other words, that you are not going to be subject to the same degree of subservience of the scattered remnants of anybody who fought for the Aztecs.
I see.